The Committee on House Administration will come to order. The title of today's hearing is Oversight of the Operations of the Library of Congress. I note that a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. Also, without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so members may submit any materials they wish to be included therein. I thank the ranking member, Mr. Morelli, members of the committee, and our witness, Dr. Carla Hayden, for participating in today's hearing. Today, the Committee on House Administration is continuing our oversight of the United States Library of Congress. The purpose of the hearing is to examine the operations and top management challenges of the Library of Congress. The library is the main research arm of the United States Congress, and it's also the world's largest storehouse of information and data. As such, it's important that the library functions at the most effective level possible. The library's vast collection contains over 175 million items, including books, audio materials, manuscripts, photographs, and more. The library has an appropriation of over $850 million in fiscal year 2025 and has a fiscal 2026 budget request of $901 million. This is an increase of $49 million from fiscal year 2024 and 2025. And I think we'll be discussing that increase later today. Since 2019, the Library of Congress Inspector Generals identified several key priorities. The list includes strategic planning and performance management, digital strategic planning and execution, financial management, and the visitor experience master plan. Additionally, the Library of Congress is home to 2 important entities, the Congressional Research Service and the U.S. Copyright Office. The Library of Congress has been effective at improving its operations and processes in recent years, but I think we all believe there's more work to be done. The library's Visitor Experience Master Plan, or VEMP, is one of those priorities. The project was intended to cost $62 million, but is now expected to cost nearly $94 million, a $31.5 million budget increase. This increase is partially the result of inflated costs of construction materials and personnel. Additionally, there's some unique challenges associated with modification of the library's historic Thomas Jefferson building, which was completed in 1897. However, poor project management and coordination between the Library of Congress and Architect of the Capitol are factors as well in the cost increase. Congress directed the project to be completed before the U.S. semi-quincentennial in July of 2026. Now the project is not expected to be completed until March of 27. This year, the Library of Congress Inspector General issued an audit report on VEMP that details the numerous failings and challenges. I look forward to discussing these and other projects today. Separately, the Library of Congress houses the Copyright Royalty Board, which was established in 2005. The board is composed of 3 administrative law judges and sets statutory license rates for certain music services, aiming to create an efficient online marketplace. Due to court challenges to rate-setting procedures, over $1 billion in royalties remain undistributed as of November of 2024. Meanwhile, content creators go unpaid for their work, sometimes for a decade or more. This committee hopes to hold the first ever hearing with the Copyright Royalty Board judges soon to discuss the board's work. In closing, it's worth noting that the Library of Congress recently celebrated its 225th anniversary on April 24. I look forward to our discussion today to ensure that the library operates as effectively as possible for the next 225 years while maintaining its greatest priority of serving the congressional community in a nonpartisan fashion. Thank you for being here today, and I look forward to hearing from you, Dr. Carla Hayden, during our conversation and your remarks. With that, I will yield to the ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity and also for gathering us all together. And good afternoon, Dr. Hayden. Thank you for being here. It's hard to believe that you're already nearing your 10th year as the librarian of the Library of Congress. And to say the past decade has been turbulent, politically would be an understatement, but you've consistently risen above the fray and have performed your duties, in my view, with incredible professionalism and in a wholly nonpartisan manner. So I want to thank you for your continued service to the library and to the country. You know, nearly a decade ago, Dr. Hayden appeared before the Senate Committee on Rules and Administration for a confirmation hearing There, she outlined a bold set of goals for her term as Librarian of Congress, goals that she and her team have successfully met. And I want to just highlight some. One of those goals was to expand digital access so that all Americans could engage with the library's collections. And under your leadership, Dr. Hayden, the library released its first ever strategic plan for digitization, and last year alone, nearly 100 million unique visitors explored the library's digital content, something that's, I think, a great success. And this achievement was one of the many made possible by modernizing library technology, another goal that you, Dr. Hayden, emphasized at your confirmation hearing. And one of your earliest initiatives was to consolidate library-wide technology operations into a single central office. And as a result, excuse me, the library systems, including the Copyright Office's enterprise copyright system, are now more cost-effective, innovative, and user-focused. In fact, when you assumed office, the library had 31 open GAO recommendations related to IT. As I understand it, 30 have been closed, and the one a final recommendation is currently in the implementation phase. So that's, again, I think a great success. And the progress extends well beyond technology. I think when you became librarian, you pledged to throw open the library's treasure chest. And last year, as part of the Visitor Experience Master Plan, the library opened its new Treasures Gallery, which I will just say I'm partial to. I think it's fabulous. That gives the public access to precious collection items not previously available for public viewing. And I think, again, that brings the public in to appreciate all that the library has to offer. And I know that the project initially has faced some challenges. I understand coordination between the library and AOC is approved, and that those issues have largely been addressed. I look forward to hearing more about the Visitor Experience Master Plan and its progress today. I also want to take this opportunity to commend two key library service units, the National Library Service for its continued innovation in serving readers with print disabilities, as well as the Congressional Research Service for hosting an excellent bipartisan new member seminar and helping us adapt to the post-Chevron environment we find ourselves in. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't discuss the context in which this hearing is being held. The current administration, by virtually every measure, has declared war on cultural institutions, libraries and museums chief among them. Through executive directives and budget cuts, the administration is actively working to dismantle the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which helps fund libraries across the country. If this effort succeeds, libraries in virtually all our districts around the country will be forced to close their doors. Even the Smithsonian has come under fire, absurdly accused of promoting improper and corrosive ideology merely for presenting historical facts that the president finds inconvenient. It doesn't take much imagination to see the Library of Congress next in the crosshairs, and I'm very concerned about it. Let's be clear, it's the Library of Congress, as a legislative branch agency, is wholly independent of the executive branch. Yet, I find it mystifying, or at least incongruous, that the president, not Congress, appoints the Librarian of Congress. So several years ago, Chairman Stile and I partnered on a bill that changed the architect of the Capitol from a presidential appointment to a congressional appointment. The bill was signed into law by President Biden, and last year Congress, not the president, successfully appointed a new architect. I think it's long past time to make the same change for the Librarian of Congress, as well as other legislative branch agency heads like the Director of the Government Publishing Office. And to that end, I will be drafting legislation to achieve that goal and would certainly welcome bipartisan co-sponsorship and partnership. So, Dr. Hayden, once again, thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for your partnership with this committee, support of the Congress, and service to our country. I look forward to our discussion. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. We appreciate your comments. Without objection, all other members' opening statements will be part of the hearing record if they're submitted to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Today, our witness is Dr. Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress. We're excited for you to be with us today. You're recognized for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Steele, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of the committee for this invitation to appear before you to give you an update on the programs and activities of the Library of Congress. Since I appeared before you last summer, the library has advanced key initiatives of importance to the Congress and others in furtherance of its mission. The library is fiercely committed to the goals of expanding access, enhancing services, strengthening capacity, and fostering innovation for the benefit of our users. Foremost are the members of Congress we serve every day as an agency of the legislative branch. With more than 181 million physical items and a growing digital collection, the library takes tremendous pride in its role as the steward of the national collection. We are providing more programs and services than ever before, while modernization, automation has allowed us to expand productivity in some areas and to do more with less. Last week, the library did celebrate its 225th anniversary since its founding by Congress in 1800. Almost as old as the country itself, the library provides the Congress access to a collection of information that at present day is unparalleled anywhere in the world. In fiscal 2024, the library supported members of Congress and their staff in a variety of ways. The Congressional Research Service, CRS, handled over 75,000 congressional requests, published over 1,000 new products, and updated over 1,700 existing projects. The Law Library staff responded to nearly 1,000 research and reference inquiries from Congress. The library's Congressional Relations Office organized over 370 congressional events, displays, and tours, as well as delivered over 66,000 specialized outreach emails to members and staff. And library staff responded to 135,000 reference requests. About 60% of these requests came online or by email, with 46,000 requests made in person. The library also serves its many public users through a variety of programs, services, exhibits, and virtual offerings. In fiscal 2024, the library welcomed more than 880,000 visitors to its historic Thomas Jefferson building, a 22% increase from fiscal 2023. For those who could not visit in person, our robust digital presence recorded over 98 million unique visitors to the library's websites, with more than 500,000 billion page views. And in addition, the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled circulated more than 22 million copies of Braille, audio, and large print material. We also ensure the public can register their works for copyright protection through the U.S. Copyright Office. Processing times for the Copyright Office's core services of registration and recordation stand at historic lows, with the Copyright Office serving as the custodian of records related to registration and recordation. Efforts continue to make those records available online, many going back more than 100 years. And across the library, there's been great progress around technology modernization and continued IT development within CRS, the Copyright Office with the new registration system, and the library more broadly. Our staff is working steadily to support a digitally enabled, future innovation-focused library where IT applications are constantly developed to remain up to date. And finally, I'm grateful to this committee for its direct involvement with monthly briefings and bi-weekly reporting over the last 2.5 years with the Visitor Experience Initiative centered in the Thomas Jefferson Building. This project is a top priority for the library, and it is a testament to the partnership between the library with the Congress and the architect of the Capitol that we are making steady progress. As I testified to last year, we opened the first components in June of 2024 with the Treasures Gallery as the new shop, and next will be the Youth Center, named The Source. So in closing, the Library of Congress takes great pride in serving Congress and the American people, and with Congress's support, the collection and the services will continue to be an unmatched resource both within the legislative branch and throughout the country. So I thank the committee for their interest in the library and look forward to remaining closely engaged with you.
Thank you very much. I'll begin our questions, followed by the ranking member. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Library of Congress recently experienced a cyber breach that compromised the content of several emails from members of Congress and their staff in the immediate aftermath. Library of Congress worked with law enforcement partners and its IT vendors to mitigate vulnerabilities. Dr. Hayden, are there any high-level takeaways and lessons learned that we should walk away from that experience?
Yes, and I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank the committee for your support during the cyber breach last year. We have a close working relationship with Microsoft and other legislative branch agencies, so we were able to uncover this extremely sophisticated cyber breach. And we worked quickly to mitigate the vulnerability, and has been publicly recorded that we were able to stop the threat actor, and we have followed up, and this is something that we want to continue to do. We had a separate cybersecurity investigation, a second one, that we think we need to make sure that we do annually, and we're looking into that, not just when there's a breach, but a continual addition to our cybersecurity efforts.
Thank you very much. Let me shift gears. Library of Congress has appropriated $725 million, and under the current, in 2020 it was $725 million. Under the current CR, $852 million, over $100 million more than 5 years ago. And now the upcoming 26 budget request, $900 million. Obviously a lot of money, but Library of Congress can also provide a lot of value. And so trying to dig in as to what you're looking to accomplish with the increase in funds.
The library's budget and that increase is actually including a mandatory pay-related request and also price level increase. And so when you look at the fact that the library is trying to continue the IT investment, the actual progress that we've been able to make with the IT investment that Congress has made, our requests this year basically focus on continuing that. They're modest requests, 3 new requests and 3 re-requests in our budget.
Thank you. Let me jump gears one more time. Visitors Experience Master Plan.
Yes.
We noted that it's likely to not be completed in 2026 by the semi-quincentennial celebration. Is that accurate?
That's the latest estimate for the architect of the Capitol, and I was we're excited about the project and the progress that we've made, especially in the last 18 months and 12 months with the new architect of the Capitol, Mr. Austin, and we have made quite a bit of progress with that. So we are hoping that the construction aspect of completing the third part of it, the Treasures Gallery was the first, the Youth Center will open December of this year, and there might be opportunities for that orientation date to accelerate. So we're hopeful.
That's positive.
We're disappointed when we got that latest estimate on construction.
Are you finding an improved working relationship with
Oh, my goodness,
the new
yes.
architect of the Capitol?
Yes.
Oh,
I testified with Mr. Austin this morning, and several weeks ago. We meet regularly, our chiefs of staff.
And is that a
speak
shift
regularly.
from the previous architect of the Capitol's management style?
Yes.
Yes, you don't need to go further. We had a whole hearing on the previous architect of the Capitol prior to his ultimate termination. With the limited time that we have left, there's been big changes over the past 8 years in your tenure as Librarian of Congress. Briefly, what's your top priority for the next 12 months?
The next 12 months, the library as a whole wants to continue to build on the progress that we've made with our information technology, because we've been able to, for instance, in the copyright system, we're at the point now where we're looking at the largest part of that, the registration. 80% of the registrations that come in will benefit from this new enterprise. We're also looking at how CRS can use new technologies to serve Congress. We've had experiments with AI, and we're testing that and seeing if that would be helpful. And also making sure that our collections are preserved digitally, but also available digitally. So we really will be looking at making sure that this momentum that has been pretty phenomenal when you think of where the library was when it got a GAO report in 2015 before I started, that had 135 recommendations, and that we're down to one.
Well, thank you very much. I know we focus in on a couple areas where we think there's broad room for improvement, but let me tell you, I know you and many people on your team work really hard. I can see some of them sitting behind you, but there's many more who may be watching online who dedicate a lot of time and service to the country and to the Library of Congress, and their work should be commended. I hope you can share those remarks with many of your colleagues.
Thank you for that.
I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a number of the topics that you would ask questions about were on my mind, so thank you for getting through half of my list here. That's makes it easier. I did want to talk, if I can, Dr. Hayden, about AI integration, which has the potential to significantly enhance internal efficiency. And can you just discuss some of the library's modernization efforts and tell us whether AI will be an element of future library modernizations, and whether you see AI as supplementing positions, replacing positions, or potentially both?
You definitely characterized AI in terms of the promise of AI, and the library has used AI in several ways in different aspects, from our library services to cataloging to really doing those experiments with CRS in terms of something like bill summaries. To date, most of the AI pilots have not yielded satisfactory results, because we have to have, as our CIO reminds us all the time, humans in the loop. And we have to maintain the accuracy of the information and our responses. And that's number one, is particularly with CRS. And so we are doing the experiments, we're looking at how we can use it, but we are not rushing to try to replace staff or do anything like that. We know that our staff really are our biggest resource.
Yeah, just to follow up, and I see our new CRS director, Dr. Donfried, here, and we had a brief conversation last week about this as it relates to CRS. Could you just talk about the value of AI data-driven tools in the CRS analysis, and how this might enhance the quality of support provided to members of Congress?
The potential of CRS using AI lies basically in freeing up staff who are very knowledgeable from, and I have to characterize it as lower level tasks. And that's why the promise of, for instance, the bill summaries, if you could do that using AI and programming, that would save more time for the analysts to be able to do more in-depth analytics and use other tools. And they're looking at data analytics, and that's been another pilot they've been doing.
I appreciate that, and I note that, you know, while AI is clearly continuing to get better and it's an extraordinary tool, that there are moments still when you get information back that you know is not right. So it does take a fair amount of human oversight. And to that end, have you budgeted or started thinking about training for staff so that they can, you know, appropriately use the tool to advance the mission at CRS or at the library just more broadly?
The library more broadly, and CRS in particular,
Yeah.
And we already have digital labs and experimentation that's going on, so that's budgeted in with that, and we are hopeful that some of the tools will develop, but at this point, they're not ready.
Yeah. I want to shift just briefly in the last minute or so that I have. The library's 2024 to 2028 strategic plan, anchored by the theme, A Library for All. And I know that reflects your commitment and the library's commitment to ensuring that all individuals, regardless of geography, background, age, ability, can benefit from the resources. Can you describe some of the recent work the library has done to expand digital collections and how this is helping reach broader audiences?
The strategic plan covers 2024 to 2028, and so in our first year, we have had many performance goals that we've really accomplished, about 65%, but they're focused on enhancing access to our collections and our services. And so the digital tools that we've been able to utilize have helped in terms of our unique collections. It may not be something that people realize that when the library makes the collections available, we're talking about our unique collections, the diaries of Teddy Roosevelt, things that people would only have been able to see in person. And so at this point, that's been a major part of what we've been doing, as well as in our strategic plan is the training of the staff and cross-training as well. And that's been very exciting for a lot of staff members.
Well, I thank you, Madam Chair, and I have to unfortunately leave for a House Appropriations Defense Subcommittee in just a few minutes, so I want to, again, thank you. I do, one last question. I asked you last year to help decide whether we use the term comic books or graphic novels, because there's a big dispute in my family. Do you want to help us solve this?
Comic books are a distinct format, and graphic novels are
I think that's the same answer you gave me last year, so
Hasn't
at least you're
changed.
consistent, if nothing else.
Hasn't changed, so, and both are very good gateways to reading.
Very good, which is the most important thing. Thank you very much for being here and your service, and I yield back.
Thank you and welcome, Dr. Hayden. We are pleased to have you here with us today to testify about our Library of Congress. With more than 178 million items in its collection, including millions of books, audio materials, manuscripts, and photographs, the Library of Congress is the largest library in the world. The library was established in 1800 to provide research materials and support for Congress, and continues today to be an invaluable resource in informing Congress and the legislative process, including serving as the home as the Congressional Research Service. Since its creation, the library has also evolved to become the home of the U.S. Copyright Office, as well as a national cultural institution welcoming nearly 2 million visitors a year. Dr. Hayden, I would like to return to a subject you touched on just a moment ago, which is the library's role in preserving and sharing data with the public. Would you describe for us further what is the library's role in preserving data and information and making it accessible to Americans?
The Library of Congress's role is to make its collections foremost available to the general public. The Library of Congress holds the papers of 23 presidents, 38 Supreme Court justices, notable organizations, and individuals, from Clara Barton to Rosa Parks. Number one, so making those unique collections accessible in as many ways possible as we can. Also, there are collections of books. You mentioned prints and photographs, other formats that are also unique in some instances, but definitely not available on local and state levels. And so as the National Library, our role is to provide all of those materials for Congress to do its work in many ways, and we have many requests for materials and collections, as well as the American public.
And you also touched on the concept of making some of those materials available for digital visits for those who cannot physically come to our nation's capital. Would you elaborate, please, on the types of things the Library of Congress has done to make collections and special exhibits available digitally for those who wish to see them?
At this point, the Library of Congress has digitized approximately, and our CIO is right behind me, so she might indicate something, but approximately 61 million items. And that includes every page of Teddy Roosevelt's diary. That includes the papers of those 23 presidents that we just put on, and the new exhibit that we just opened, the Two Georges, where a lot of those documents are on exhibit now as part of our America 250 celebration. And so when you look at the fact that you could have Rosa Parks's peanut butter pancake recipe available online for anyone to look at and try to replicate, it's a wonderful opportunity for people to connect to the Library of Congress in a way that they couldn't. Our exhibits, of course, are in-person things, but we also have a digital component even for exhibits. So you can go online and look at past exhibits. One of my favorites, baseball. All of those exhibits, we have a digital component, and that's really the way that we can touch every American.
And as we've touched on already in the hearing, you're in the midst of a very large IT modernization project. One of the things that I would like to go back to related to the IT modernization, you mentioned that the copyright registration process you anticipated would specifically benefit substantially from the IT modernization. Tell us more, if you would, about how you anticipate that process being affected or any other major impacts of that IT modernization for the public.
When I started my tenure as Librarian of Congress, the modernization of the copyright system was one that was of great concern to a number of stakeholders, from individuals to groups. All wanted a more technologically advanced copyright registration system. So we have worked diligently to do things like change a process that was paper-based, recordation. It is now automated. And then the historic records that I mentioned that go back over 100 years, that was a card catalog, a physical card catalog of records. If you wanted to look at historic records, those have been digitized, and we're working on making sure that there's metadata that you can then search like another online catalog, but at least you could look by year at the records online. And the last part is that being able to register online. So we have developed and maintained a stakeholder group that is advising us, and there is a pilot on that registration now. And so far, the reviews have been good, and so that's really the future. Once we get online registration, that's it.
All right, well, Dr. Hayden, I am out of time. So at this time, I'll recognize Ranking Member Sewell for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Hayden for her testimony today. My mom, Nancy Gardner Sewell, my beloved mom, was a librarian for 42 years at Selma High School, and she really instilled in me a great love of learning, especially all the wonderful tools and interactive tools that the libraries have installed. And so I have I'm a lifelong learner and love the fact that the Library of Congress helps members of Congress get to know each other through your dialogue, congressional dialogue dinners. And I have to say that the opportunity to not only sit next to fellow members of Congress and senators, but the opportunity to hear directly from some of our nation's amazing authors has been a real plus for that. And I know that I speak for a lot of members of Congress that that's probably one of the experiences they'll remember most. You know, recently, public libraries across the nation have been under attack by extremists who are trying to ban books that do not align with their ideology. We're seeing daily attempts to erase Black history and strip funding from critical entities like the Institute of Museums and library services that help rural and underserved communities access information and tell their stories. Just last year, the American Library Association reported 821 attempts to censor library books and other materials. These egregious efforts to censor information and defund libraries undermines public access to knowledge and essential community programs, and they should serve as a wake-up call for all Americans. As members of Congress, I we should be working overtime to protect and expand access to information. That's why I have been so impressed by the work that you've done, Dr. Hayden. You have always made it a priority to ensure that the Library of Congress fulfills its mission to inspire and inform all Americans. I wanted to wanted you to elaborate on how the digital and IT infrastructure project has really helped to expand access to the Library of Congress.
And thank you for your comments, because as the National Library with these unique collections, I often think of what it would have been like in Baltimore, Maryland, where I worked, when there was a disturbance and there were young people in that branch library that I could have pulled up Rosa Parks' in her own hand, what she felt like at the time, and make that connection. So by making these materials available online, we are providing that access for everyone anywhere, that they
Yes.
can see the draft of the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson with footnotes or side notes with B.F. Ben Franklin and J.A. John Adams, that they can see the primary sources. And that's been the Walt Whitman, during the pandemic, we really had educational virtual packets for not only educators, but caregivers who were suddenly educators. So
Exactly.
you could take a nature
Well, I can
walk.
speak personally about Rosa Parks' own handwriting and how inspirational it was. As you know, I represent the Civil Rights District of Alabama, and you and your staff were so nice to pull some of the materials that dealt specifically with my district and gave my staff members an opportunity to see it. And I heard from everyone how important and how personal that became for them. So I can speak personally how the digital has really, as well as the physically looking at some of the documents, can really help. You know, in 2024, the library's National Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, NLS, also expanded production to streamline the distribution of Braille and talking books. However, in March, the Trump administration placed the staff that supports libraries in all 50 states on administrative leave and suspended grant programming. Can you talk about how access to Braille books and information across rural and urban communities throughout help to bring access to the disabled?
And the print disabled, and with the Marrakesh Treaty, foreign language materials, but also there was an extension of the mandate for NLS to include people with dyslexia.
Yeah.
And that opened up definitely a broader reach and a younger reach as well, and seniors with macular degeneration and things like that. The motto of NLS is that all may read. And so looking at electronic digital Braille readers that refresh, being able to loan those materials, also that people can, especially some of the younger, could download, and some of the more digitally mature could download the talking books, and all of those things really makes materials accessible to people that would have been shut off. So
Well,
it's
Again, congratulations on 225-year anniversary of the Library of Congress, and long may we have the Library of Congress have access. Thanks.
Now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Griffith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In a recent letter, I and several of my colleagues raised serious concerns that the Copyright Office proposed rule on access to electronic works, 37 CFR 202.18, goes far beyond the office's statutory authority and risks significant harm to authors and other copyright owners. After subsequent discussions with my team and with other friends, and with the Library and Copyright Office, my concerns have not been allayed, and I have more questions than answers. I intend to follow up with a detailed set of written questions to better understand how the library and Copyright Office need to shift their plans to comply with the law and address our concerns. We agree to keep the deadline for this final rule suspended and continue to pause any movement on this rule until these concerns have been resolved, or at least we've come to an understanding.
Well, thank you for that, because the rulemaking that you're asking about would allow the Library of Congress to select other types of works in digital formats for our collections, but with the same strict access limitations that the works that are allowed now have. And those works are newspapers at this point. And they are deposits only. Only 2 researchers at a time can use them, and only on secure on-site workstations that are in what's called a lockdown state that prevents copying and transmitting by the public, and they're not connected to the internet. And also, something that you sometimes forget about with these types of things, there are security cameras and library staff who are physically present, and the workstations are, I mentioned just 2, strategically placed so that the screen is visible by the staff as well, and their time limits. So we use a combination of the high tech to make sure that they can't do certain things with the things that they're looking at, but also regular surveillance. And so this rulemaking is to say that we would be able to make access for other formats with those same types of restrictions. So it's not we would not be doing anything as we don't do now with interlibrary loan, like we are able to do with some print materials to other libraries. When we do interlibrary loan, it's only to an institution. The person who's using the book that we send to St. Louis, for instance, the St. Louis Public Library, or Millikan College in Illinois, would only be used in the library. The person could not take it out physically from the library. So even with the print materials, when we let other libraries, not individuals, use them, there's security. So this is what the rulemaking is about. So we'd like to definitely work with you and other members on just clarifying what this is. It's more access, but it's still limited, very limited.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your response. I didn't come today to get into a censorship argument. I would just say I think there's significant differences between access for adults and access for children, and I'll leave it at that.
And I'll agree with you, sir. I started as a children's librarian, so I'm very aware
Yes, ma'am.
of that.
I appreciate it very much, and yield back, Madam Chair.
I now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Representative Johnson, for
Thank you
5
so-
minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And thank you so much, Dr. Hayden, for joining us. You know, I've been in this job now just a few months, and I have to say the Library of Congress is my favorite place in DC. It's beautiful. It makes our country proud. It's a critical cultural and knowledge institution in this country. It's a place where people can engage in research. They develop, they have creativity, they innovate for our scholars of today and develop and create our scholars of tomorrow. And I applaud your digitization effort and appreciate the vastness by which that effort is due to the incredible depth of the collection of the Library of Congress. Because at the end of the day, the library is one of the few institutions in this country that has survived every president, regardless of party, Civil War, World Wars. It has endured the test of time, and because of the incredible value that it places on the intellectual development of our country. And I think that the digitization effort to reach in the far corners of the rural districts across this land and the urban districts of people who can't get to DC to see these amazing collections in person are wonderful. And I want to echo Representative Sewell's comments on the bipartisanship by which the library dinners create us and afford an opportunity for collegiality. In my experience here, there's not enough opportunity for people to spend time, and it has added to the acrimony of this building, and I think we need more spaces like what the library provides us. I'd like to visit with you about the visitor center. That seems to be something that has been of concern, and if I understand properly, you had a very extensive plan for a visitor engagement center and this visitor center experience. And it was in 3 phases, and the phase 1 and 2 are complete. We're now just waiting on phase 3. Is that correct?
Phase 1 was the first ever permanent treasures gallery, and that opened last June, and to great reviews and a
It's
lot
phenomenal.
of success. It's wonderful. We can rotate. So, for instance, we're getting ready for the America 250 materials, so we could have some things that will stay the contents of Abraham Lincoln's pockets the night he was assassinated, something that we bring out, but also whatever's commemoration is going on. The second part, and it's a 3-part project, all in the Thomas Jefferson building, which is our front door. That's the iconic building, and where most people visit physically, because there is also a tunnel from the Capitol Visitor Center where we get quite a few groups coming in as well. So people, is that youth center, should open in December of this year. And then the last part is an orientation center that will let people know about the history of the Library of Congress, but also what the Library of Congress can do for them, the Veterans History Project. There'll be different views into the different services, the NLS, but also the #1 question that people ask going into that building is, where are the books? And so they will get a chance, and we'll make sure in that orientation center that they will get a chance to look at just one stack of the 836 miles of shelving that the Library of Congress has. But we'll talk about those 836. So we want people to come away with that last part with an understanding about what the Library of Congress does and its history.
What do you need from Congress to best fulfill your mission there?
One aspect that's been very helpful, and we hope will continue, especially with appropriations, is the support to allow the library to continue on the digital path that we are on. It's one thing to have that 836 miles of shelving, but it's also very important that we continue to be something that is relevant, easy to use, all of the devices that we can keep up with technology. And that has been wonderful in terms of what we've been able to do, but to keep supporting those efforts would be very helpful.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hayden. I'm out of time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I now recognize the gentlewoman from Oklahoma, Representative Bice, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Hayden, for being with us this afternoon and for the conversation that you and I had yesterday. I want to first start by mentioning, it was referenced earlier by the ranking member, Morelli, talked a little bit about AI and how we're utilizing AI, and as the chairwoman of the Modernization and Innovation Subcommittee, that's been a big focus for my subcommittee. There will be training, actually, in utilization of AI tools that is currently being discussed within the House, so I wanted to make sure that that was addressed. And the other thing that I think is of note is the flash reports that our subcommittee drafted and posted. You can find them on the CHA website that really talks about AI and integration within the House writ large. And so I encourage anyone that wants a little more information about what the House is doing on an AI front to look at those. As has been mentioned, the library is home to one of the most important congressional support agencies, the Congressional Research Service. And I see the director, current director, Don Frieden, former director Llewellyn are here this afternoon. So thank you for your service and the great work that you are doing. This organization has faithfully served Congress for over 110 years. And the staff provides critical support and are subject matter experts that help inform members and certainly our staff. So we appreciate the work that is happening within CRS and appreciate the opportunity as members of the House Administration Committee to continue that great work together. I want to start, you mentioned just briefly in the last line of questioning, money. And funding, making sure that you have continued funding. I want to talk a little bit about the visitor experience funding. We spoke briefly about this yesterday. The initial funds that were appropriated were totaling $42 million for the federal side, and it looks like that's increased to $72 million, so it's a pretty hefty increase. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The cost estimates from the architect of the Capitol in terms of design and construction, we understand were estimates, and over time, those estimates
When were those estimates originally given to Congress? Do you remember?
there were several iterations, and they continue to be given to Congress. And I mentioned those meetings that happen every 2 weeks now, and it's the library and the architect of the Capitol. And in fact, I brought some visuals, 1,000 and how many pages of notes over the last, since 3 or 4 years in terms of working on this project. Of course, there was the pandemic that delayed actual physical construction. So the project is on track.
Will we be revisiting the estimates that you were given for Phase 3, or are they already built into the original cost
There's a
estimate?
healthy contingency
Okay.
that the AOC has, and I mentioned that I testified with Mr. Austin this morning. We are not anticipating any. Of course, with, and as he mentioned also, though, with historic buildings, 1897, there might be things that are discovered, but they're well along, definitely with construction, site preparation. There have been a few things, but the contingency is very healthy. And on the library side, we met and stayed within the budget of private fundraising for the 20 million and even somewhat beyond. And so there should be no design changes.
Great.
Nothing that would, this is, we're when the Inspector General report that came out in February of 2024 came out, we were all in the planning stages. Now we're in the implementation a year later. And so there should not
Great.
be any significant increases.
You mentioned in earlier testimony that you have a great working relationship with the new architect of the Capitol and that you all have been able to coordinate accordingly, and I very much appreciate that. I think there were challenges, as was mentioned by the chairman, with the previous architect to be able to make sure that there was dialogue and agreement on how to move forward. And so I thank you and the architect for making sure that we continue to use taxpayer dollars wisely. We are appropriating those dollars to you, and we expect you all to be able to do the most that you possibly can to make sure that we're achieving our goals. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield.
Now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Carey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you, Doctor, for appearing here before this committee today. I'm a big fan of history, and one of my favorite authors is John Milton. Most people know him from his work in Paradise Lost, but one of his lesser-known works was Areopagitica, which I'm sure you're aware. And in it, he wrote, "The importance of individual freedom is to seek knowledge." And I truly believe that. He believed that truth inherently is strong, and that given the ability of debate, would obviously persevere. That's why I feel that the library and your mission are so important to this nation. And so I want to thank you for your service and all your years of service. Last time you testified before this committee, we touched on some of the library's field offices, and I believe there are
6.
6 or 7, something like that.
6.
So these 6 field offices, have you and your team, I'm sure they've visited all of them?
Yes, and members of the staff from the field offices come to Washington, D.C. to interact with their colleagues, and I meet with them and that. And so the field offices have been very successful in terms of making sure that in those 6 offices that we are able to get materials that would be very difficult to order and to even know about, especially legal materials. And we are part of a consortium of other research libraries, including colleges and universities. So we are actually helping with the network, and they pay to have those materials purchased for them as well.
Do you feel that, I mean, they are very effective at what they do as far as the overall mission of the library?
Yes, because what the library does as a national library is, just like we digitize things so people don't have to always be in person, we also know that Congress needs to have materials from other countries, especially legal. I'm going back to legal again. And that it started with Thomas Jefferson, and also we talked about challenges. We didn't mention fires, so we've had 3. But when Thomas Jefferson sold his collection, the largest personal collection in the United States at that time, for the first fire, and he sold it in 1814, he said, "There is no topic to which a member of Congress should not have occasion to refer." And it's a universal collection.
I would agree with that,
Yeah,
Doctor.
so that's been part of the library's mission as well, to make sure that this government has a collection that, and I think it's safe to
Second
say,
to none, second to none. Let me
this
just...
library thinks.
Let me just point out a few facts for my colleagues and those that are listening online. You had a total of 883,000 visitors in
the Jefferson
2024.
Building.
Yes. That is up 22%. That's very impressive. I think the other thing that I was really interested in is what you're doing for young people. And one of the bills that I'm currently working on is I do believe that the Smithsonian has a very big, important role, and it needs to stay very big and important here in Washington, D.C., but I would like to see a National Children's Museum. But having said that, one of the things that I noticed was your focus on the youth, and I thought that was very important. The other thing on a lesser note, you know, I had the opportunity, Ways and Means, some of my colleagues and I have been meeting over in the Library of Congress for quite a few times. We have a little bill going on right now. But I'll tell you, I was very impressed, and I had time to walk around the gift shop. And in my house during holiday season, because we all tend to spend a lot of time here in the Cannon, Longworth, and Rayburn building, my family has a phrase that says, "Nothing says holiday cheer like Longworth gift shop gear." So I was really happy to see that there might be some other place that I might be able to buy a few things. And to my colleague to the left's discussion on cost and everything, listen, I gutted and redid a house, trying to do it historically accurate to an 1875. There's always going to be changes. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you, Doctor.
I'd like to thank our witness for appearing before us today. Members of the committee may have some additional questions for you, and we ask you to please respond to those questions in writing. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or to revise and extend their remarks. If there is no further business, I thank the members for their participation, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.